This edition of MacVoices is sponsored by lynda.com, the unparalleled online video training library. For a free 10-day unlimited trial, visit lynda.com/MacVoices. Hi, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices at AltConf and WWDC. I ran into Leander Kahney of Cult of Mac and to talk to. It's great to see you, Leander.
You too, Chuck. You too.
Yeah, it's been a little while, unfortunately.
Yeah, too long, unfortunately, especially with Macworld being cancelled. So that puts a big hole in the calendar.
So anything happening this week, Leander?
There's lots happening this week. Too much.
Yeah, nothing at all, right? Yeah. What do you think are the most important things you've seen coming out of this week?
Well, there was a bunch of announcements at the keynote, and I think a lot of people kind of did a little bit disappointed. Thought it was more like a maintenance keynote, a lot of maintenance releases of OS 10 and iOS 9. But I think the music app is going to be a big deal, and hopefully that'll turn into iTunes for the mobile era. And advance, take digital music into that, finally make streaming digital music mainstream. And iOS 9 looks really polished. There's a whole bunch of stuff that's going to go on under the hood, and of course they're fixing a whole bunch of stuff in Yosemite, I hope. So it's not the most, it wasn't as important as say last year's when they gave us the framework for HomeKit and HealthKit, and there was this real sense that there was, some big plans being laid, which, we haven't even really seen the fruition of that yet. The HomeKit stuff that was released a couple of weeks ago was kind of underwhelming, but this one is, Apple's always interesting, and the momentum of it is crazy. They're selling out in a few minutes, and all the people here and all the people here at AltConf, it just shows that there's so much, momentum behind, the company and the platform, and it's super fun to see a lot of people that you don't see, most of the year. Everyone comes together. It's the big gathering of the clan, so it's always great fun.
There are signs outside that say that this is the epicenter of change, and I'm sure there'll be those that say, "Boy, that's a little overreaching." But you do get that sense when you're here that this is where it all happens. This is where it's the genesis of all the great products and services that we enjoy. Really is.
It's amazing, I think, the impact that this technology company has on culture. It mediates everything we do. And it's, there's a touch of Steve Jobs hyperbole there, but nonetheless, I think it is true. It is true. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, in the late 90s, Apple was on the ropes, and it looked like it was going to go out of business, and Microsoft was dominating, and if you reminisce back to those days and you look at what's happened now, Apple has become the center. I mean, and it's a much bigger company than even Microsoft was back in those days. It has so much power and so much reach, and it's actually it's sort of in the 60s there was music and revolution, and these days I think it's being mediated by companies like Apple in the heart of technology.
Now you've been covering the Apple culture, not just the news and the tech, but the culture for a long time. It does feel like it's evolved, it's matured in a positive way, but it doesn't seem to have lost any of the fire, at least from where I sit. What do you think?
It's become different. I was thinking back because I'm going to do another version of the Cult of Mac book, which was a book very much a product of the late 90s when Apple was in trouble and the users kind of banded together to save the company. But it was also the time when the net was first taken off, and this culture sort of naturally gravitated online, and it was interesting to sort of see, oh wow, here's a culture. It's kind of like Hell's Angels, but instead of being into motorbikes, they're into computers. So it's interesting to document that, and there was definitely this. There was a very strong sense of you're an Apple person, and it was very much in opposition to Microsoft, and you do still see those kind of religious wars. I mean, it's between Android and iOS people. People have an iPhone and people have an Android, and especially I think actually the Android people are a lot more. They're almost like the Apple users were in the late '90s. Like they're a little bit defensive, and they get, they get more upset if you impugn anything about the platform. And yeah, Apple users are a bit more chill. But if you think about until recently, I mean, like all the new up until last year. The new product launches, people camping out, the lines around the store, people like lining up for weeks. I mean, I think people started to line up a month before, the products were announced. And yeah, there's some professional line sitters and there's problems with scalpers, but there's still a lot of fans, people who they're lining up, I think, mainly to hang out with other people who are into this stuff as much as they are. So you still see that. I mean, it's still there. It's a little more diffuse. It's bigger. It's harder to see it. There used to be a time when you go into the Apple store and you could spot all the people who were like you. And the same thing I think was true of Macworld too. And now these days you go in and you go, there's all these people who, I don't know, they don't seem to be...
They're normal, is what you're trying to say?
Right, exactly. Yeah, they're not Apple geeks, but that's fine. It's a big church, and I think the more the people come into it, really it is the better. It's much better than it was in the late '90s. I mean, you don't want to return to that when the company was, about to go out of business, but it's still there.
And so I still think it's a very welcoming community. And your point about walking to an Apple store is an excellent one. There are Apple geeks there, and there are normal people there. But you never see the Apple geeks turning up their noses at the normal people. It's just, sure, come on in. You're joining the family. You may be new to it, but you're joining the family.
Yeah. And they're very willing to help. It's a shame that things like Macworld have gone away, because that was the one place where it was sort of the big gathering of the tribe, and I always love going to it. And I'd love to see other conferences. This is a great one, the AltConf here, and it would be great to see other events. And there are some smaller ones springing up, and I hope they get traction and become a place where you can go and meet like-minded people. It would be a shame if it was just limited to product launches and sort of ad hoc events like that. User groups, used to be the place where you would go meet people, and user groups, they're definitely, a thing of the past. They don't exist any longer. But, so I'd like to see more, conferences. Hopefully conferences will become, there'll be more conferences, and they'll continue to be places where people meet.
I got to ask, since you brought it up, you said you're going to do a revision to the Cult of MacBook. What kind of time frame are we looking at? Because that's something I'll look forward to.
Yeah, hopefully this year. I've just started working on it. I just made a plan of all the changes I'm going to have to make, and there's a lot. In fact, the whole book's going to be completely ruined, which is not a bad thing. I hadn't looked at it actually in 10 years, and I was dreading it. I was like, oh no, this is it. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. So, and of course, it was sort of thinking about all the different things that you could bring into it. Where has is there still an Apple culture, that's identifiable, and are there still sort of, users who are interesting to profile? At the time there was people getting tattoos and haircuts, and there was all this kind of interesting stuff going on, and I still think it's going on. So there's a lot of collectors. I was working on a story this week about the Apple II, and they got Kansas Fest coming up in July, which is the gathering of Apple II fans. And a lot of them are fans these days, but I was still surprised there's still people who still run the Apple II for business. And there's still people who are developing both hardware and software to support it. And this is like from the 77, getting up at, decades and decades old now. And I found some interesting people who are actually still using it. So hopefully that'll be a good feature. And I think that's interesting stuff to put in there, like this dedication lasts for decades.
Well, and I might disagree with you on the word dedication. It's more a love of the platform. It's not, okay, I've written my name in blood and I've got to stay here. It's like, I want to stay here. I love this. I enjoy it. It's like, classic car people. They love those machines, and nobody's forcing them to. They're doing it out of for the sheer fun of it.
Absolutely, it's very true. Very true. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there was it's across the board. In fact, there was some kid I'm hoping to talk to who's like 12 years old who just started to learn how to program. And he's learning how to program an Apple II, and he's using it to run. I think it was a drone. I think he was he was running a drone from his Apple II, which is kind of amazing.
I'll say that. Okay, I definitely will look forward to what it is. Leander, I know you got stuff to do. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
You're welcome, Chuck. Thank you.
It's always good to see you.
Thanks.
Folks, more from AltConf and WWDC in San Francisco. This is MacVoices. I'm Chuck Joyner. Visit MacVoices.com for links, show notes, to subscribe, to connect with Chuck on Twitter, Google+, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and the MacVoices blog. Subscribe to our weekly newsletter, the MacVoices Dispatch, to stay up to date on all the latest MacVoices news from our front page or at macvoices.com/newsletter. Do more with your Apple tech by subscribing to the free MacVoices magazine on Flipboard by visiting macvoices.com/magazine. Advertising and sponsorships handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.